Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was a game that seemingly had everything going for it. It had a beautiful, expansive world to explore, combat that was fun, fast, and engaging, and a cast of characters that everyone already knows and loves before the game even came out. And on top of all that, it already had the nostalgia from one of the most beloved JRPGs that has ever graced this earth. But despite all of these positives, I have to say that all of these good things that this game has to offer are unfortunately buried beneath a sea of filler, mini-games, and a convoluted story that raises more questions than it answers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be, I guess, my big fat review of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So, first things first, let's be fair and let's be honest. Rebirth is a fun game. The combat is just as fun as it was in the previous game, and the world and the cast of characters are the ones that we all know and love already. So, it already has that going for it going in. Not only that, I gotta give Square Enix their dues. The world itself is so beautifully crafted. It still amazes me to see all the original towns and all the original locations from the PS1 game remade on PlayStation 5 and seeing how beautiful everything looks. Seeing how, even though on PS1 everything was kind of blocky, over here on PS5 you can still recognize and know the locations when you see it. Square Enix really knows the world of Final Fantasy VII well, and you can tell that there was a lot of love put in to bringing all that stuff back to life for the modern era. There are times when you're just walking around in this game, taking in the scenery, and you feel immersed in this vibrant, detailed world. Junon feels alive, the Gold Saucer is a carnival of nostalgia, and the towns and cities are packed with side quests that on the surface promise depth and engagement. And then there are the characters. Of course, you know, Final Fantasy, we have our amazing characters that everyone knows and loves. Cloud, Tifa, Barret, and Aerith, they're all brought to life in ways that Final Fantasy VII fans could only dream of. The voice acting, the animations, the interactions, it all adds layers to the characters that we thought we already knew, but that we see expanded upon in these games. Now, despite all the praise that I just gave it, there's something that I need to address once again, because it is a huge problem throughout the entirety of this game. And that is the problem of the filler. Once you get past the flashy combat and the beautifully crafted world, you start to notice something. For every moment of fun, there's an endless grind of filler. Fetch quests that feel like they're designed to pad out the game, random detours that serve no purpose other than to slow your progress, and side content that feels like it was thrown in just to stretch out the playtime. I'm not sure why this is all so heavily pushed throughout the entire game, but it's pushed so much to the point that you can even see and expect it coming. Now, I get it. Some filler is expected in RPGs, but in Rebirth, it feels like the filler is the game. And then there are the minigames. Oh boy, the minigame. Now, I'll be the first to admit, FF7 has always had its share of quirky side activities, and back in the day, they added charm. But in Rebirth, I can honestly say that it's overkill. It's like every other area you enter is screaming at you to play another minigame, whether it's pulling off some ridiculous side quest or wasting time on activities that feel like they belong in an entirely different game. Sure, a few of these are fun, but the sheer amount of them makes it feel like Square forgot they were making an RPG, not a minigame collection. Instead of feeling like fun or optional distractions, a lot of the time these minigames feel mandatory, forcing the player to play through them if they want to unlock certain side activities or important story elements. It feels as if the game is pulling you from what you actually want to do and making these minigames mandatory just for you to progress through the story, ultimately dragging out the experience without adding any real substance. Now I want to get to the most egregious part I feel that this game has done, and that is the convoluted story. The real thing that frustrated me most about the story is that if you already thought that Final Fantasy VII's plot was already complex, Rebirth turns it into a complete mess. Let's be honest, Square had a clear story with the original FF7. Sure, it had its twists and turns, but it was at least coherent. Rebirth though, it's like they took that story and ran it through a blender. Alternate timelines, cryptic visions, characters who should be dead, characters who shouldn't exist. Everything is just thrown all over the place and thrown into chaos, and it keeps making me question, for what? Just to keep us guessing? We don't really get any definitive answer if certain characters are dead, if certain characters are alive, if certain characters are in this world, an alternate world, an other world. It just feels like there's a bunch of different stuff and different characters existing in different points, and it kind of just takes away any sense of finality, because it's like, well, if a character dies, we're probably going to see them again. They're probably not really dead, because the game never really answers what the hell is actually going on.
What in the hell is going on?
Nothing gets resolved either. There are more questions than answers by the end of the game, and instead of feeling intrigued, I just felt frustrated. It was like I was playing Kingdom Hearts 3 all over again. It's one thing to build mystery, but it's another to withhold any sort of meaningful payoff. The worst part about all of this is that it's not even new. It's the same Tetsuya Nomura nonsense that we've been dealing with since the early 2000s. Everything this dude touches at Square Enix, you can feel and literally sense his presence on it. Which brings me to the real issue. Is the real issue of these games Tetsuya Nomura? If you've played Kingdom Hearts, you already know what I'm talking about. Nomura has this way of overcomplicating stories to the point of absurdity. He throws in alternate realities, clones, cryptic characters, and flashbacks within flashbacks, all while refusing to give us, the player, any actual clear answers as to
what in the hell is going on?
What the fuck is going on? Yes, and I know it's a meme at this point, but I gotta say it, it's the Kingdom Hearts effect. And this is littered all over Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The original FF7 had a clear narrative arc. You knew who the villain was, you understood the stakes, and even when things got weird, it all felt like it was leading somewhere. And Rebirth is like Nomura can't help himself and he has to complicate things for the sake of it. And all this convoluted storytelling doesn't serve the game. In fact, it detracts from it. Instead of building on an emotional weight of the original story, it feels like we're just getting lost in endless layers of confusion. And as someone who loves these characters, as someone who loves these games and these stories, that's what truly hurts the most. Because I played Rebirth and I've seen all the trailers, and I played Remake, which was great before it, and there was so much potential here. Rebirth could have been an epic continuation of the Final Fantasy VII saga, reimagined for a new generation with incredible gameplay and an engaging story. But instead, we're left with a game that buries its brilliance under filler, excessive minigames, and some entangled, convoluted mess of a plot. It's as if Tetsuya Nomura just wrote all his ideas down and just vomited all over it and was like, yeah, we're just going to let all these plans, all these story threads just run wild. It's frustrating because you can actually see the greatness underneath, but every time you think the game is about to take off, it drags you back down into the mess of filler, pointless side content, and convoluted storytelling. This literally is the entire game. This was the majority of my 85-hour playthrough. So to conclude all my thoughts, you might be asking, well, where does this leave Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Rebirth is a game that's bursting with potential, but ultimately falls short because of one man's overcomplicated vision. Nomura's obsession with twisting plots and unnecessary complexity has turned what could have been a streamlined, epic narrative into a convoluted, exhausting experience. At the end of the day, Rebirth is fun, I'm not denying that. It has moments of brilliance, but that brilliance is buried beneath layers of filler and narrative chaos. And that's the biggest tragedy of all. It feels like the game and Tetsuya Nomura himself doesn't respect our time, and he just keeps leaving breadcrumbs and threads that don't go anywhere. Nothing is resolved, no questions are answered. Shit, by the end of this game, one of the biggest questions that every single person had going into it, is Aerith gonna die, is she not gonna die, is not answered either. We see Cloud save her, then we see him not save her, then we see him save her again, then we see him not save her. But then she's there with us in the final battle, then she disappears, Cloud is the only one who can see her, Red 13 can sense her, but everyone else thinks she's dead. The game doesn't give you a definitive answer on everything, and that is one of the most iconic moments in video game history, and they butchered the execution completely. To the point where, if I'm being honest, I don't know if I can sit here and say I'm excited for the third game. I'm definitely going to play it, obviously, because I'm already invested in this world and these characters. But in terms of hype, like I had for this one, the hype is kind of dead. I'm kind of just going to wait for the game to come out. I'm going to play through it and see if it's good or not. But as for this one left me severely disappointed and just left a bad taste in my mouth. And like I said before, you can feel Tetsuya Nomura's presence all over this. I don't want to feel like I'm bashing on him or bashing on Kingdom Hearts, because that is also a series I love as well. But I feel like he is someone who is great at starting stories, but he is not great at giving them any payoff or finishing. And unfortunately, it shows all over this game. Ladies and gentlemen, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. I'm the Offline Warrior, and I'll see you guys next time.